Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm here to give you my Arc Raiders first impressions. Now I want you guys to keep in mind I've never played an extraction shooter before, so this is all new to me. The first thing I noticed when I loaded into the map was the movement was slower than I thought it would be, but it feels very thought out. It feels like everything you do is on purpose and it stops you from sprinting around everywhere because you'll eventually run out of stamina so quickly that it makes you think about your next step. I also noticed right away how slow your weapon movement is. So you need to be aiming in or have your weapon out even if you have the smallest thought someone might be around. You have to think about when you climb up on things because it's very slow. And you can also do things like slip down mountains if you're not careful. A good example of that is when I had a teammate try and climb up on something and he ended up falling off a cliff. And I had to rush around and try and find a way to get down to him because if you fall you would die straight away. I was lucky enough to end up getting him just before he died. Another thing they put a big emphasis on is the noise. You'll make a lot of noise if you try and open up crates and things like that, so you got to be careful and be aware of your surroundings. And it's not just real enemies that you're looking out for, you're also looking out for the robot enemies that are in the game. Now one thing I must point out is if you've never played an extraction shooter before, you may get a little confused at first. In my first and second game I didn't really know what the objective was, but I came to eventually realise that you can craft things in the game like workbenches to help you do specific upgrades to weapons and equipment. So you can track what you need before the game and enter a game and search for the items that you need. One thing you do need to keep an eye on is the time on screen during the game. Each extraction point has its own set timer on the map before it closes, and you can no longer extract there, so it forces you to plan your route on the map or you risk missing extraction altogether. And if you do that, you'll no longer be able to leave the map and you'll lose everything you've picked up and also lose everything you've taken with you onto the map. So also think about the items you take with you and whether or not you'll end up using them. Another thing you should do is try to work with your teammates. As hard as it can be, if you aren't using a microphone, try to stick around your teammates because if you get separated and go down, there's pretty much a very low chance that they'll come revive you. I did have a pretty funny moment during this first game where we went to extract and I wasn't close to my teammates, and then one of the giant robots leapt a long distance to kill me and my teammate didn't know what to do. So he just left me there before I could crawl into the extraction point. The robot jumped back on top of me to finish me off. If you stick around to the end of the gameplay, you'll see exactly what I mean. Another thing is, I do feel like the game isn't really beginner friendly, so keep that in mind. You get thrown onto the map with weak weapons and gear, and you already struggle to kill the robots, let alone the real enemy players. In my second game I had a teammate rush in to kill these real people, which I could hear talking on the prox chat, and they all died. I stayed at the bottom of the zipline, and when the enemy came down the zipline I was shooting him, but because he had good weapons and mine was so weak, he still managed to kill me easily. This didn't really feel fair, but I also understand that that's the whole point of this game, is to try and collect things so you can eventually get yourself to that level of power. But I thought I'd point that out because that would definitely turn certain players off who aren't expecting the big skill gap. There's a lot of things you can do from outside of a match which makes the game feel like it's got a lot of content. I found it really cool that there's a skill tree so you can upgrade your player so he can do things like sprint longer or crouch walk faster and things like that as an example. I've never seen a skill tree in a multiplayer game like this, so it felt really fresh and I love the idea of it. I also like that there's a marketplace to buy and sell weapons and gear. So if there's something you don't really need, you can sell it and use your currency to buy other items that you might need. And some of the items do seem like they're really useful. In the first map that I played, there seems like there's a good mix of areas, and I love when you enter dark buildings, it kind of forces you to use your flashlight, which can work in other players' favours because they can see the light, but it can also work in your favour if you're sitting in the darkness waiting for an enemy to eventually make their way in. I also love that the prox chat can be useful for communicating with players who aren't on your team. It makes for some cool dynamics. In my second game that I mentioned earlier, we came across these enemies that killed us and they clowned on us in the chat, which was funny. It was nothing but light-hearted fun that makes the game way more interesting. But it can also be a good thing because in my third game we came across 3 people who told us not to shoot them, and we ended up working with them in the end to take down one of the bigger robots. There was no way we could have done that on our own because we struggled to kill it with the 6 of us, but it just shows how different you can choose to approach each encounter with people and how much the prox chat benefits the game. I must say I love the soundtrack in this game. It's not what I was expecting whatsoever. I feel like it's got a semi-futuristic tone which plays into the game's art style perfectly. But if there is one thing I'd recommend to you though, is to turn down the in-match music a bit so it's easier to hear what's going on in your surroundings, because that's super important in this game. One thing I'll say is the game ran flawlessly for me. I'm playing on a 4080 Super at max settings in game and didn't run into a visual or gameplay bug the entire time. It's pretty clear they put a big emphasis on making sure the game runs the best it possibly can. One thing I do wish, which maybe further into the game it won't be a problem, but I feel like I barely run into any real players. In about 4 or 5 games I only managed to run into 2 different squads of players. I'm hoping that the more I progress in the game, the more real people I'll run into during games, because the 2 encounters with people I did have were absolutely the highlights of my games. One thing you should do when picking up gear is make sure you read what it can do. I didn't realise in my first 2 games that some of the items you pick up that can be used to craft items can also be used as throwables that make noise or do things like create fire. It's another good example of being able to scrap things together you might need to use if you don't have anything else. Obviously right now the game has a lot of hype around it, and I'm sure people have seen all the clips going around online that are almost cinematic. And I must say, if that's the reason why you're looking at getting this game, definitely do it, because I've already had moments like that during some of my games, and I've only played 4 or 5. It was definitely worth the investment for me, and if that's what you're looking for, you'll definitely find that it's a good investment. I don't know what the future roadmap is for this game, but if it continues on the path that it's going right now, I think you'll find that it's going to have a lot of legs to stand on. I just saw today that on its second weekend it actually gained players, and I don't think there's many games that I can really think of that have done that. I think the other game that might have done that recently is probably Battlefield 6, but I'm not even sure if that managed to do that. It's pretty impressive. You guys can tell me in the comments below if every extraction shooter game is like this, but I find it really addicting and hard to put down. I don't know if that's just the quality of this game shining through, or all extraction shooters in general are like this. The only other shooter that made me not want to put it down recently is Battlefield 6, which just shows how good this game is. I never thought I'd be playing an extraction shooter, as I'm normally used to your respawn game mode style FPS shooters. It's great that there's now big competition in the market for things like Call of Duty. One thing I haven't done is play with friends, but I would definitely recommend doing that if you can. I can tell without even playing with friends that this game is made for that social aspect, and you'll have endless memories with the things that can happen during a match. You guys should let me know in the comments below some of your most memorable moments so far. I'd love to hear it. Now I know this isn't a review and it's just a first impressions, but if some of you guys asked me would I recommend getting this game, would I? Well, I'd say if you've seen clips online about this game and you're even slightly curious or entertained, definitely check this game out. Even if you play just a few games on Steam, you can refund it before the 2-hour gameplay limit. I can definitely say with 100% certainty that if you find it even close to an interesting game, this game is a must buy. Alright, so I'll leave it to you guys in the comments below. Have you played Arc Raiders and are you enjoying it? And if you're curious about the game, do you plan on buying it and why? Alright guys, that's all I've got for you today. If you guys stuck around this long, please like and subscribe and let me know what you'd like to see in the comments below. Thank you guys for watching. Bye.